beverage. We're here. Ta-da! Hi.
I'm the little Easter egg today.
That went live so much quicker than it usually does. Oh, we're just gonna click the refresh chat. Oh, there it goes. Oh, good morning.
The powers of modern technology.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I think things clicked on early somehow.
So you're getting our pre-streaming chat, were you?
Well, there we go. I mean, no, luckily it doesn't send anything through until I hit the go live button. But I think I might have accidentally scheduled it at 8:30, it's seeming. We've been here since 9 a.m. Oh, well, good. I'm glad. I hope you guys had a good catch up and, lots of time to chit chat. Whoopsie poopsie, everybody. Good morning. Christine is here again to save me from myself.
I think he's had too many caramel eggs.
I haven't had any. To be honest, I've had one Monster Energy and not like a protein shake with fruit and stuff in it.
Right.
Just this is shameful to admit, but when I'm done working out now, in the last minutes of working out, I start chugging a protein shake made out of protein powder, water, creatine, and drinking chocolate.
Oh my God.
Because I need the carbs from the drinking chocolate. So you just shake it up and I get a cookie dough flavored protein powder and it's actually kind of delicious. It's a bit of an experience, but it's certainly not food.
No. Well, see, I'm the opposite. I saw on Instagram, Rollicking Gelato have got this thing with hot cross buns. They slice them in half, put a scoop of ice cream in the middle and then put it in a sandwich maker. And so then you walk out, hopefully not dripping ice cream everywhere.
You're definitely dripping ice cream
And
everywhere.
they were making, I think, a hot cross bun ice cream because they ripped up hot cross buns and put it into a blender with a whole lot of stuff and turned it into something. And then mixed it and made it into ice cream. And I thought, God, how good's that?
For those of you like me who have survived the trauma of working as a baker in New Zealand in the build-up to and on Easter, let me tell you, the last thing that you ever want to experience ever again is and at least once a year, even when you're working as a baker, which is when it's at its worst, you have this insane moment where the hot cross buns come out of the oven at some point during the 5-week hell of hot cross buns, because there's all your normal work, and then there's 70 kilos of hot cross buns to make, okay? And not just one flavor any longer. No, God forbid. There's got to be fruitless and chili chocolate.
And now brioche.
Really? Honestly, you don't even want to know. The brioche ones, every time that you have to make them, you're just like... Anyway, but let me tell you, at least once a year, if they're hot and fresh and you can just smell them out of the oven, I take one and I slice it in half and I put a piece of butter so thick inside of it that it looks like someone's cut a half a block of cheese and I eat it and I'm like, I still hate these emotionally.
No, well, yesterday was a hot cross bun day for Christine, so that's what I just ate continuously most of the day.
Did you go on a hot cross bun tasting tour or was it strictly
no,
a countdown?
I've done that in the past and been disappointed. And so now I just see them and then buy them because, God, I joined the nightmare that was the supermarket on Thursday night. Holy heck.
I
don't even want to go there.
Did not.
Yeah, it's and I only wanted to get 2 things. It's sort of because of where I was working and what I've been doing. I couldn't get in earlier. Yes, I know. So I pre-bought my hot cross buns, had them in the freezer, so I knew I didn't have to get them. And they were still pulling packets and packets out.
Nightmare.
Anyway,
good morning.
Good morning. What are you wearing today, Ethan?
What am I wearing today? I'm wearing Earth and Sky, which I might actually take off because the tassels are getting caught in my thighs.
Nether regions.
I just realized that as I was like, I can't sit up all the way. That's a new problem. I'm wearing Earth and Sky by Stephen West in Road to China Light, and it is gray and awful, but it is not actually that cold. Even I must admit, it's very confusing. So I dressed for the Arctic as I do every day, just in case. But so this is Earth and Sky. I really love it. I'm very happy with how it's turned out. The tassels are key. In Stephen's pattern, there is no instruction to make the tassels because he, like all modern shawl designers, doesn't understand their purpose. Just as a side note, the tassels on shawls are not an extra. They're not a bonus. They're supposed to be there. They exist just like fringe to add weight to the ends of our shawl so that when we wrap them around us, they stay in place. If you are sitting at home and you are somebody who says constantly, I love to wear shawls, but I don't know how to style them, they always fall off. Breaking news, your shawl might need tassels. Now, hear me out. Why make so many insane tassels? Well, it started off with What the Fade, and then I realized that I finally had a triangular shawl that stayed in place.
Oh, right.
So I got really suspicious that perhaps the tassels were useful. Now, if you know me, you know I have a penchant for knitting you rock, and I've made 2 of them, and they are also now both tasseled, and they stay in place. And I have actually been going back through my shawls and finding the ones, if shawls don't have a wide border section that produces additional weight that's non-contiguous, so it's a separate piece to the rest of the shawl, they won't sit as well unless they're quite small and meant to be up around the neck. If you have anything mid-size or larger and it continually falls off on you, regardless of its shape, if there are points anywhere on it, put tassels. The weight of the 2 tassels pulls the shawl down and stops it from falling off once you wrap it around. That's the whole trick. There is no mystery. You don't need shawl pins. You don't need shawl cuffs. You don't need those weird buttons from Jewel. You don't need all of these 1,230 different things that have been invented since knitting had its resurgence, right?
Yeah.
To hold your shawl in place.
That you can never find when you're running out the door to go to work.
All you need to do is make some, pardon my language, fucking tassels, it turns out. So yes, tassels. And secondly, I'm wearing the toile number 3 set-in sleeve with the French seamed shoulder. So it's not as obvious on camera. I'll put up some photos of it.
The seams here.
Yeah, the seam line at the back
is just it sits down just below.
Yeah, so those are.
So it's not right on the shoulder.
Exactly, and those French seam shoulders are really helpful for people like me. As you can see, I have a large shoulder structure into some big pecs with a large upper back. So when we shift that seam backwards, it actually just allows for more openness at the back of our neck without causing the neckline to flare open giantly. So if you're somebody who has struggled in the past getting things that ride up in the back, moving the seam back to the back side of our shoulder can really help to alleviate that. And you'll find lots of the top-down knits today have this particular shoulder sort of construction. It doesn't work as well seamlessly because there's no tension break, but it is what it is. This is in Robinson from Durham. We have it on the page where it is. I don't know, but it will be here, and then you will be
it's the one with cotton in it. The Robinson has got some cotton in it.
Nearly 30% non-wool fibers, and I love wearing it. I can't tell you, I'm always happiest with my most recently finished thing, but recently, the last couple of knits, I don't know about you, it's my opinion, have really been quite amazing on the yarn front. The toile number 1 drop shoulder in Albertine and Berenice is
gorgeous.
Sublime. The toile number 2 in both of it, in the Arwetta and Tilia, amazing, and in I think we can all agree the Acadia one is the world's most sumptuous pullover. Like, it's glorious. I can't wait to knit with Acadia again. And this one in Robinson has really come out. And I am knitting another one of these with the standard shoulder and Penelope as we speak. So, yes. And I wore it today because I asked Christine to wear this, and I thought we'd look cute in similar colors on camera.
Yeah.
What are you wearing, young
What
lady?
am I wearing? I'm wearing Flowers.
Yes.
From Issachar. And this is the one where the page, there's a whole page about the swatch. And so and then the pattern is barely a page and a bit. Yeah. So you knit the swatch. This is where you come into your own with Intarsia. Now, do not be afraid of Intarsia.
It's just crossing some yarn.
If you do what they call weave and Steven, or you just loop the loose ends in when you join your new ball, you can do Intarsia because you just switch it over.
It's so easy.
And cute little fish.
Yeah, the little fish bobbins, we have lots of them in stock. Don't be afraid. Intarsia is your friend. Yeah.
So this pattern is, you knit up a swatch. Now, the pattern is using the Issachar tweed with, they were mixing the mohair with Tivini or Spinny or something, and I thought, oh, I'm not buying another ball of yarn. So I did it with...
I love that. No, I like... I'm
It's like
so
it was
happy
one
for this
ball, and it's like,
conversation.
really? So I did it with the mohair and the tweed, and so it's a bit sort of speckled, and I thought, nah. And I'm not really into pretty things, so I decided, we had it here one Saturday with the other flockers, and I said, I think I'm going to go goth.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to have black flowers. So 2 strands of the mohair, she says, trying to find the camera.
Yeah, it's
It
always
gives
cool.
a really rich black
It
to
does.
it.
It's really deep and quite opaque.
And so I thought, and the back, see, with your
Intarsia is
with
so
the
neat.
Intarsia,
You can't even see where it starts and ends.
no,
already.
it's gorgeous. So, and you only need 1 ball of mohair, because Christine, doing 2 swatches, unheard of, measured out how much, and I measured out 2.5 metres. I could have done it for less, but you know, you don't want to be yarn chicken on everything. So, and the mohair comes in 200 metres, so you're only using about 50 metres of the yarn. So, and then the pattern is you put the flowers wherever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So it says knit the front. So I knitted the front, and then realised I was running out of space, and I had one of the flowers too high up, so it became the back. And then I started on the front again and did it. So, and it is so comfortable to wear.
It's
And
so gorgeous on.
I wear this in sort of summer, and then I went and bought, yes, Christine bought some knitwear, but a really fine merino
the
polo.
kind you can't make.
The kind you can't make, exactly. And I wear that underneath in winter and put this over the top, and it's got a nice deep armhole that you can do that in. If I was going to do the trigono, I would make the armhole bigger to wear it, because vests are having a moment in the knitwear at the moment, and purchased
They are.
ready-made. So this is the way to do it. So I love this, and I've threshed this
I
to
love
death,
it too.
and it has not pilled at all. I can't
No.
believe it.
The woolen spun tweed has 20% mohair blended into it,
Mm.
and that big long fiber really, really helps to secure all of the shorter fibers of the wool. So it produces just a beautiful finished effect. Now I'm going to answer a question, and then before we came on, Christine and I realized something, and we're going to talk about it briefly before we tell you what we're both knitting, because it will help, because we can explain why what we're both knitting is the way that it is. So first of all, Guy, 9 total on each shoulder. For the short row shaping. So there should be 9 on each shoulder. Sometimes I say things like 9 times total, and I assume people, and I'm guilty of issigering more often than not lately.
I.e.
Which
limited instructions.
there has been some feedback over the years about my 26-page patterns to make a stockinette jumper. It has come up more than once. And I can admit I'm very influenced in my early knitting and pattern writing by a very specific style and approach to pattern writing that came out of American knitting during its resurgence, starting in the 90s and coming through until about 2018, when I would say they really started to lose ground again to the Europeans. And now everything is right in the world, and as it should be, because this makes sense demographically based on how many people knit in each place. Europe is now the king of pattern design and yarn releases and all of those things again, which makes sense. The majority of the mills are there. While people don't love this, the majority of the fiber producing animals have direct production shipping things back to there. For example, most of the beautiful yarn that goes in, most of the beautiful wool that goes into making Tivini, Spinny, and Jensen from Isager all comes from here. It's all New Zealand fiber that goes there and gets spun in a mill that's built for processing our particular lamb's wool.
Right.
Which is pretty cool in a lot of ways. So, Christine and I were having a chat about Danish pattern writing.
Oh, yeah.
And Christine and I are both well and truly deep into the Isager fold. And because of Christine, I think a lot more of us have boldly jumped into Isager than might have happened at other shops. Because you really led the way, yourself and Trish really did just plow into a bunch of them in a row and show us that there was a lot of possibility sitting there. I am very grateful that we had knitters from the pre-Ravelry era in our knitting group, like yourself, to remind us all that you actually don't need all of that stuff. You know how to make a drop shoulder pullover, you're going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's actually the secret message of Isager, which is you know how to knit. You're going to be okay. Make choices for yourself because you have to make 1,000 choices when knitting a pattern anyway. And if the pattern's instructions aren't as oppressive, I would say, or specific or directed, it's easier to make modifications and trust the outcome. For example, both of the things that Christine and I have made from Isager include instructions that allow you to make a lot of choices. And those choices add up to individual garments that are quite unique, but recognizably the same pattern. Also, you're making, in general with Isager, 2 rectangles, one of whom is going to have a scoop out of it to make a neckline of some shape, and 2 sleeves.
Yeah.
The good news is, it's 4 rectangles. Just calm down. You're going to be fine. And like, the patterns are pretty hard to, once you're knitting them, and if you've knit the swatch, they're pretty hard to scrub. Now, you have a pattern here for what you're currently making.
Yes, now yeah.
Which is amazing.
It's called Gooseberry. Now,
So
unfortunately, it's not on Ravelry. It's on the Issachar website, you know, because Christine just goes deep diving. I'm not doom scrolling. I just get into those websites and away you go. Now, the pattern for Gooseberry is one side here and down here.
Yes.
And it's a long-sleeved jersey, she says.
It's so good.
That, again, this is the back.
I love it.
And then this is the front, so it's got one seam, so it's not in the round. I haven't changed it. You have one seam up the side. They do say to knit the sleeves in the round, but that ain't going to happen. But
Not necessarily.
I started this before Christmas, and this is the one I couldn't take away on holiday because it's a bit intense. But you had to knit a swatch because the stripes, you decide how big the stripes are. Now, the stripes are 1 thread of mohair garter stitch, and then you can combine it with Tavini for rib, for the other darker.
Beautiful fabric.
And so I did this swatch.
She swatched it
But
out.
I wanted to show you the colours. Now, I'm
Yes.
not sure how it's going to show up, but the Tavini, it looks red, but it's actually quite orangey with a black or dark grey. And that's the true colour of the mohair, the red. But
Yes.
I think when you knit it, you just get a gorgeous red.
Deep red.
Deep red, and it's not it's not as dark as the mohair,
No.
but it's got a sort of a light
It has
to
a
it.
beautiful heathering underneath
Yeah.
as well, where the darker parts of the darker yarn capture the depth of the mohair, and the lighter parts lift the mohair to a brighter color. So it almost looks like you've knit with tweed,
Yeah,
when all you've done is combine a heathered yarn and a silk mohair.
and it is so soft. I think this is the reason I haven't progressed far with it. It's
You
such
keep
a
petting it.
it's such a dream to knit.
Yeah.
It really is, and it's so. And this is even before you dampen it or wash it or do anything. It is so soft. It's incredible. So. It's a bugger if you make a mistake, and then it's easy to drop. I've got all these little wee markers where I've dropped a stitch, but you know, Christine, I'll just pick that up later. It's quite forgiving. You know, you just have to increase one or knit 2 together. So that's it. So this is going to be a fun knit, and so I'm determined to get this finished and stop petting it so that I can actually wear it. It'll be just fabulous for winter. Well, coming into winter as well.
Totally. Now, a lot of us are knitting with Danish yarns and Danish patterns today. Whether or not you're using a Danish yarn, you most likely, if you're sitting at home watching this, have knit a petite knits pattern. Now, we hear a lot about petite knits, and Christine and I don't knit them particularly often.
Because they're in the round.
One accessory, and that'll be about the extent of my petite knitting this year. And I also have sworn off knitting in the round, he says, while doing colorwork flat. And so I just wanted to address with all of you guys, because Christine brought this up, and there is an answer as to why the Danish patterns are so brief and why they don't include technical instructions and other things to the same level of depth. There is an assumption in Danish culture, and it's important to understand, everyone who's watching from home, knitting is a cultural experience. It is that place, like folk art, because knitting is a folk art craft, where culture and art and artisanship collide, Where we have those things collide, different cultural traditions evolve around it. If you consider glassmaking, for example, as another way of thinking about this, the Japanese and the Chinese versus the Romans developed two very different approaches to glassmaking, which have led to two long-term outcomes: the Japanese minimalist style of blown glass and the Venetian style that couldn't be less minimalist if it tried. Venice, never known for its restraint.
But you love the colours.
You have to love Venice, except for the smell. But what we want to talk about here is the Danish culture of knitting, which is based around knitting together.
Yeah.
So Danish knitting is all about being together in a group, and they run knitting groups for young mothers who are just coming through pregnancy at public cafes, often with an older, more experienced knitter present to answer questions. So the reason when you're knitting through Danish patterns that they will often have instructions that seem vague is because the pattern writer is in the cultural assumption that you're not alone. And the good news is, if you knit at our group, whether or not you ask for it, you will receive support and help.
Yeah. You can either come in and get solicited advice or unsolicited advice.
You'll get both no matter what you do. And I can tell you, if you come into knitting groups and you take that advice, these Danish patterns soon become wildly freeing. And you will move on from the petite knits patterns and experiment with some essayer patterns and then go on a wild knitting adventure, the likes of which you may not have ever imagined. I am so happy that you're here because I have been in a bit of a knitting funk for several years. And recently there is something that's happened, and if you're a rabid social media follower and you're onto things today, you'll have seen that something has changed. And that change hit me personally pretty hard. But then I remembered that a wise man once said, there's always more yarn. And I remembered that back before I knew this other thing was happening, I got really excited about a book that a friend from my local knitting group mentioned existed. And like magic, because I don't know if you've noticed, but everything works out for Ethan. Blessed, not lucky. The book turned up. Literally the day after Christine said something to me about it, a copy of the book showed up in an order. I hadn't ordered it, I hadn't asked for it, and I only knew that Christine had recommended it. Well, we all started flipping through the book. And the book led to the jumping off point at 1,000 different conversations, and I kept circling back to this circles in stripes pullover, and I didn't cast it on, and I started knitting other things, and I didn't cast it on, and I did other stuff, and I did all these other things. And then Christine came back in with her Trigono pullover, her new one in Maryland, and I saw it, and I thought to myself, you know, the mistake you're making right now, Ethan, is that you're not playing with all the new yarn, because there's always more yarn, right?
And you can always experiment.
Exactly. So this is why we want to talk to you this morning about essayer patterns and essayer yarns, because a new frontier of knitting is before you if you want to take an adventure. And you don't have to worry about knitting these patterns, even if they seem complicated or hard. The moment that you start knitting them, all of that falls away. You don't need to carry the patterns around with you. You know, like, it's knitting the way it used to be.
And it's sort of like you trust the process, because when I was knitting this, and it was sort of like Intarsia, and I had memories back from, you know, last century when I did it, but I found my little bobbins and needed to get more. But this was such a fun knit, and you just trust the process and trust the pattern. And you know, Christine doesn't do swatches, and it said do a swatch, and I thought, oh God's sake, okay, this is a new designer and all the rest of it, let's do it. And that's when the swatch, because you know, Christine doesn't look ahead to the pattern, God no.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. So I did
That's
the swatch, and then turned over, and it said, you know, cast on X number of stitches and do the garter stitch rib at the bottom. and then it says, and then use the swatch, you know, this is how you do it. And I thought, oh my God. And so you only need to know how to do the swatch, and then you get into a count. And I was thinking about this. This is the sort of thing that if you've got a random fingering weight at home, you can use that for your flowers. And, or you've sold out of it now, but that sparkle yarn. I just thought, God, that would be so fun to do.
I might actually bring some back in for stuff like this.
Because you only need one ball. And then you can put the flowers. And if you find that, I think the worst I had going across here was maybe 5 little bobbins hanging off the back. But because they're so small, it was actually it was easy to transport into knit, and so you can have a bit of fun. And sure, some people like line by line patterns, but for those of you who you want your knitting to challenge, it's a fun to knit. I mean, we talked about this last week, and Ethan likes the finished garment. I like the process because I love knitting. And so if it challenges you and you want to use different yarns or do something different, it just lets you, because as you know, I don't follow the pattern line by line, not even the Issachar ones really. So, you have a bit of fun, and it's got this little pattern in it, and you get into the groove, and away you go.
And the thing is, it starts off, and it might be a little...
Isn't this fabulous?
Different than what you've done before. But what it's going to do is transform. So this is, again, using those substitution options. So this pattern is designed with the tweed, but with the alpaca one. The alpaca one is a smooth lace weight yarn, and I decided to substitute for the silk mohair and shorten up the stripe sequence because I wanted the stripe at the top to transition into the stripe sequence instead of changing, because in the one that they did, it transitions in the dark one at the top. But I had to take out half a repeat of the stripe on each stripe to make it do that. But it was really simple to do because the pattern is just based on measurements. And it just tells you, when you come to this point, if you're like this, finish it like this. If you're like that, finish it like that. If you've done big dots and small dots, you're gonna have this many stitches. If you've just done big dots, you should have that many stitches. And it'll even say in the pattern, if you don't have the correct number of stitches, just work this pattern as you can. And you're like, right, because there's no point in ripping it out. And I will say, it's not as evident, I don't think, on camera, but in person, the transformation to the fabric is really effective. And once you block it, see how the dots just open up a little bit, providing more depth into that. In the silk mohair, you don't have to catch your floats with the tweed and the silk mohair. Just leave them. I caught not a single float, 7 stitches across, and I think the backside is just as effective as the front. Now, how do you start playing with all of this? Well, there's a couple of different routes you can take. For one, I really do think that starting off and knitting something in just any Issachar yarn might be helpful. So I've just whipped up a couple of toe-up basic socks in the Issachar sock in color number 44. I used the pattern from the inside of an opal sock label.
Well, it's free. You might as well get full use.
No, I just thought it would be fun. But just to be clear, everyone, the opal sock pattern is cast on some stitches. I'm not kidding. Knit some rounds. You could have started from the toe. If so, increase. You may have started from the cuff. Don't increase. Work ribbing if you started at the cuff. And then they're just like, work until it's long enough. Then make a heel. And you're like, right. Because that is all it has to be, right? Like, socks are just ratios of stitches. And then the books really are a great resource. We do go in and out of stock on them quite quickly because they're fabulous. And I've bought a lot of knitting books over the years, and I have knit nothing out of them. I can fully admit to this. Mea culpa, everybody. The only 2 knitting books that I have used something out of, my very good friend Dallas, who is amazing, got me a copy of Shetland one year for my birthday from Marie Wallen. And I have tried to knit the same cardigan out of it twice. It never fits. And I have knit circles and stripes out of this already. This is A Knitting Life 3. This is the book that Christine recommended that Issachar sent me for Christmas. And it is full, and I mean full, of inspiration on, like, you just open to a random page, and there is nothing in here
that's bad.
No, and there's nothing in here. She explains her whole design process for each pullover.
That's really interesting because you get these knitting books and you never read. Oh yeah, this
the
one.
Squares one.
Now that looks easy, but it's a challenge for a knitter because you're turning and having some of it going vertical and some going horizontal.
There's the circles and stripes finished. So, how do you play, right? Well, if you've got circle and stripes on the needle, clearly I've already gone on a bit of a color adventure. I'm going to hand Christine one lot of this yarn. Woo! Ah! Okay. Christine, you're going to get the dark and moody situation. Woo! We've clearly planned this. I'm going to get us a desk in front of us.
Yeah, I've got a chair at the side.
Yeah, we're not professional podcasters. Again, as I keep saying, if you are free of a Christchurch Saturday morning and you want to come watch, please do. Yeah, see, the conversation going on between Bianca and Guy there is so good. If you guys are having problems picking colors and needing a little bit of confidence, the good news is you can't go wrong. So what we've done here is we've taken, I'm going to grab a couple of those tweeds off you for ease. What we've done is we've taken some unusual pairings to make up the tweed colors. So by muddying the tweed colors on purpose and combining the purple with the navy, the purple brown with the brown at the bottom, and the black with that dark gray, it creates a really interesting palette.
These will be the spots.
Those will be the dots against the white for circle and stripes. Now the other beautiful thing is, in almost all of the sizes, you only need one ball of silk mohair and one ball of tweed and 2 balls of Jensen to make the entire garment. So it is actually quite yarn efficient, and it's easy to take around even though you've got a lot of different stuff. Now, this particular muddy version is really beautiful, but we do have some super secret Jensen. I'm going to get you to hold a Jensen sideways, and then I'll use my giant monster hands to hold the tweed and silk mohair. Finally, a reason for these giant hands other than cracking turkey bones apart. Their main purpose beforehand. So this is my light and bright and beautiful salute to the year of our Lord 1982. If you're here for a little bit of color and interest, try something different. We've used Tilia and, oh perfect, our little helpers here. We've used Tilia with it on this one, and then a couple of different colors across the board. It's a fun and beautiful way to play. Luckily, the employees are here to start opening the shop while we finish up the podcast. So the final thing to tell you guys, when you're mixing silk mohair and stuff together, we thought that we would come up with a great way to explain this. So this is a single skein of Arwetta. Don't worry, you'll appear on camera, but no one will know who you are. You'll be fine. Just walk on in. Okay. Yeah, don't worry. Welcome to doing a podcast from the shop. So I grabbed this skein of Arwetta in color 279, which will have an actual name.
I think could look slightly frightening, but it's not.
Yeah, it's beautiful in person. Now, if you wanted it to look slightly frightening, you may want to consider pairing it with its matching coordinate, 279, which will lighten it up a little and make it bright and bold. But if you were to take the forest green 56 that I paired with moss to make the green on my pullover, it would make it a little more neutral and cooler. And if we swapped out the moss for a more olive tone with a little bit of brown to it, the 68, it will warm it up. What I want us to start thinking about when we're using mohair is that the base yarn provides the depth of color. And then these three would provide the overtone or glaze. That's how Christine got that rich, beautiful red, was by taking a color that supported the mohair and layering the mohair over top. Because the longer mohair fibers that are sticking out go over everything, it glazes it with a brighter color. Okay, mohair and this together, there's no wrong option. There's 1,001 things happening around the shop. Knit Fast Dye Worm is wrapping up in less than a fortnight. And I hope all of you have a beautiful day, and we're going to run.
Okay.